we saw America was the first one to start doing these big pushes into that sort of technology, and then Australia, of course, followed suit shortly after. Um, that's what they do. They need some sort of event, a cataclysmic event, to then usher in those changes. And like you said, we've got phones that are scanning your thumbprint or whatever to open it. Now they don't even have buttons; then they have to scan your face to get into them. You know what I mean? So look where the technology is evolving.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that
Exactly.
people don't realize that's a biometric security, and now the company that runs that now has your biometric data. You obviously, when you start to use that particular technology, you're giving permission for that company to use it and to probably sell it or to do whatever they want to third parties or whatnot. Doesn't matter how much money you've paid for that product, you're signing away your rights to use it once you've actually started using it. So you got to be very careful of that sort of stuff for the folks out there. The other
It's
thing I was going
crazy.
to say, yeah, is it feels to me that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the laws, it normally it's something happens and it's like, well, we need to create a law in case this type of thing happens, but that's not how it worked since 9/11. It tends to be we've pushed through surveillance and all this sort of stuff, and then the law has now struggled to catch up with that. You know what I mean? So the laws now
Mm,
seem to be tailor-made to what's happening, not to
yeah.
prevent or to secure our rights and in that sort of sense. You know what I mean? Like the laws seem to be, and the people like civil rights groups are struggling to try and keep up with things like this biometric security sort of stuff. And it's being pushed through so quickly, and it's on top of us so quickly that the
Mm,
laws that are there to sort of, I guess, in a sense, protect us are struggling to catch up. And when
mm,
they do
mm,
start making these laws, they're not in place then, therefore, to prevent these things from harming us, that they work sort of side by side in a sense that if they want a particular amount of biometric data or something from someone, then in a sense, they're allowed to have it to a certain degree. So privacy takes us a back seat in regards to these sort of laws because of security. You know what I mean?
yeah, as it always has, you know what I mean? I think that's a great point that you mentioned there, General, is it seems like that is the case. It seems like technology has just gone beyond, the scope that these laws can keep up
Mm.
with. And we've spoken about this before on other episodes, with things like the My Health record system and all of these projects that are available. You can see that when you look at it, there's no legal safeguards. There's been nothing to prepare yourself for this, and it just seems like this has been the case. And I give an
Mm.
example in the
It's
article
an
about
afterthought.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I give an example in the article about this. I talk about how in Australia, we were actually the first country to introduce a biometrics privacy code, which was established and administered by the Biometrics Institute. And the Biometrics Institute Privacy Code actually forms part of Australian privacy legislation,
Well, there you
and
go.
and it dictates decisions that are made in relation to this space. But what interests me is just we've got this Biometrics Institute, this independent body that makes all of these regulations and codes that then influence our legislation. That's not an organic way to create legislation. That's not the way that things are traditionally done. So why do we have this? Well, it was because the government weren't able to keep up with technology. We didn't even have internet laws at the time these type of things were introduced, which started rolling out in 2003 after the so-called invasion of Iraq. We start to see these things roll out, and the government just couldn't keep up with knowing what this technology was. So we've now looked to other institutes that still influence here today. And now, as you've said, these systems now have risen into things like taxis, ATMs, online banking, and access to buildings. And what is dictating all of this? A select group of people that are influencing our so-called elected officials in terms of making the laws that these are structured under. So when you follow the pattern, General, it just seems like there's already some funny business, even if you don't know the full extent of why this is happening, you've even just got to question where these types of things are coming from and why our privacy commissioner is speaking at the Biometrics Institute, praising them for laws that they're going to help introduce, mate.
Yeah.
It's
Look,
ridiculous.
first of all, can I just say, everyone everyone needs to get on board and sign up and join up with Ethan's website here, because he's done such a good job. This is so intensive, this article. He's got links to back everything up. So he's, motherfucker, you've done such a good job again. Like, you do such good work, eh? Like, yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Honestly, yeah, I mean it from bottom of my arm. You do such a good job with this stuff, and it's everything you say is backed up. It's not like you make a statement and then go, like, it's not just an op-ed piece. It's literally backed up, everything you put in place, and you follow that narrative too, because that's where it's going. But one key thing I heard you say several times is why, and that's such a good question. Why? Why are we being pushed so much into this? Why is technology? Yes, technology comes through in leaps and bounds, but why are this particular branch of this technology, that is the biometrics branch of it, why is it being pushed so heavily on us? That's the real question we need to get to the bottom of, is why is that happening? And I think that comes down to it's definitely a control method, Yeah, it's being put in place. It's setting the way. It's paving the way for a control method, and we're probably going to get into that right now, I'm guessing.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. And that's as you said, that's what I was trying to do with the piece, is just sort of move everyone into that, sort of flow them along the narrative there, because all of these things that we're talking about, the history and development of it, who was responsible for it, 9/11 happening, the emergence of technology that then introduced systems to analyze this stuff, and then all of a sudden all of the laws that were introduced in Australia to kick this off, it's now ended up in a point in Australia where it's just going absolutely berserk at the moment. All of this technology, through private companies, through the government, through everyone, workplaces, whoever can have the technology. And again, we've reached a point, General, where we don't have safeguards for this type of stuff. And the next piece I talk about modern Australia, where facial recognition and biometric technologies have rapidly expanded all across the countries in the decade following these laws. And some of these you might be familiar with on the TOTT news website. So I talk about national facial recognition, how the government has unveiled new details that they will change anti-terrorism laws to introduce a national facial recognition system. So what they're doing is they're getting all of the governments and state authorities to hand over all passport, driver licenses, and any other form of identification, so they can put it into a national facial recognition database. And what I've explained on the website, and I give links to this just to build a context, is private companies will be allowed access to this facial recognition technology. All of the privacy groups in Australia have said that facial recognition is incompatible with a free society. You've got the Premier of Tasmania saying that this is the new world order. That was his quote after this change was agreed to. And it was agreed to in secret, not even after an Australian terrorism event. It was that stupid shooting in Las Vegas, General, that they then all met together and said, you know what, we're going to introduce a national facial recognition system. And they've signed the Intergovernmental Agreement on Identity Matching Services to outline the changes. And you can go through all of the hyperlinks on this piece and get a context of what they're doing. They're building a national database so that anywhere you go in the country, CCTV will be able to identify you, bypassing all of the state laws and all of the state restrictions. So that's the first part. But then it just keeps continuing. What are your thoughts on this? I know you've seen a lot of this pop up over the years that we've been covering this. All of the stuff that we've been reporting is now starting to happen. And we can get into a chat later about whether it's good or bad, what the point is. But the main premise is that this is happening, and there's not really much that we can do to stop it because it's already here across the country, mate.
Yeah, oh shit, yeah. Yeah, it's definitely being put in place in more and more places. The rollout is increasing month by month, I think, and maybe we should start buying shares in Greyhound and just start taking buses everywhere. You know what I mean? Like, you gotta be able to catch a plane because shit, man, they'll try and scan our faces. They'll be like, nah, these boys are troublemakers. No.
Yep.
Greyhound it is. You know what I mean? Like, what do we do? Fuck. That's
Well,
the look. That's the reason why I say is because why are they putting these things in place? There's a reason they're putting this automation in place, not just because they want to minimize and save money on jobs and having a person stand there at the gates and check you in, blah, blah, blah. It's not about that. It's always about something else. And it's a control grid it's part of the control grid that's being set up. This is just
mm.
one part of that grid. And more of these systems are being put in place to take part in that grid.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was crazy because I've always had this piece in mind. Obviously, I've got a content schedule, and I said, I'm going to put all of this together in the Modern Australia section, and it was just crazy just to go back through all of the articles, talking about plans to replace passports with facial recognition, January 2017. Now they're
But
being rolled out,
when you mentioned the schools thing, and I remember that from a while ago. Yeah, like when we talked, I remember talking
Yeah.
about that, how much they were when we first saw that they wanted to start scanning or were trialing fingerprint scanning for attendance. I was like, what? And
Yeah.
now when you mention it, I was like, fuck, I remember that, and that was ages ago when they started rolling. Was that nearly 2 years ago when they started rolling that out?
Yeah, absolutely. It really
2017, yeah.
Yeah, it really started picking up 2015 onwards. All this stuff just started rolling out. It was just,
Mm.
it's unbelievable. And this is all the stuff, obviously, at the time that we just talked about. Like, this is happening, this is happening. But now it's all here. Now it's all here. They're building the facial recognition database. They're building all of the airport security. And the thing is yes, you do have the choice to resist it, but what happens if you don't want to partake in it? You can't get on a train, you can't fly via the airport, you can't attend school, you can't do any of this stuff now, and
Mm.
it's already in place. And I go in to talk about the future of biometrics, and then that's very interesting there. For those who are reading this at the moment, you can have a read of that. They talk about how they expect the biometrics market to grow to $18 billion by 2020, from its 2015 value of 7.5 billion as a market. So it's set to expand rapidly,
Over double, yeah, well
more
over
than
double.
double. Yes,
Mm.
in 5 years. And I also talk about how there's new forms of biometric tracking coming in that can monitor heart and brain waves and finger vein recognition and all these new
So,
things at the cusp. It's crazy,
it's
and they're going
fucking
to be able
full
to
on,
map.
man.
This is the future. Like, all this stuff we're talking about, they're already way past that. They're just selling all the technology to governments. They're already now way past this. And as we talk
Mm.
about, once we enter the new hyper reality era, where people are going to, Facebook and technology are just going to have smart homes. It's just going to all expand. This is going to be, there's going to be ways that probably haven't even been thought about yet that would be able to identify you. But even at this moment, the future looks like it's just going to keep rolling on and keep rolling on. But where does this lead? And this is the main part of this article. So you've got some context behind biometrics technology, the technology here in Australia, what that entails, but where does this type of system lead? And over the last few years, something very interesting has emerged from China, and a lot of you may have heard of this. It's the Chinese social credit system that's being rolled out all across China in its pilot phases at the moment. And it's one of the most prominent examples of the advancement of biometric identification technology. And it sounds like something that comes from George Orwell's novel 1984. And it's very interesting. This is really fascinating. And what they're doing in general is a new national system is being developed by which all citizens will be monitored on a 24/7 basis. And what they'll be is ranked on their behavior, with the Chinese government introducing what it describes as social scorecards, right? So by the year 2020, this is going to be fully operational in China. And it began in 2014 when they first issued an outline for the social credit system, saying that the basic goal was to, quote, raise awareness for integrities and the level of credibility within society. And it goes on to focus on four main areas, mate, and that is, quote, honesty in government affairs, commercial integrity, societal integrity, and judicial credibility are the four main areas that you are judged on. And for those that have watched the video, this is something else. Like, this is just, it's almost baffling to see this system roll out so fast.
You look at how many people that is affecting. That is affecting millions of people. And until they toe the line, it's going to keep affecting those millions of people. So like we said before, it's literally about altering the behavior of your society. And they're doing this through this credit rating system. And what I want to tie that to, Ethan, is I think this has been in place, and they're using the gamification of our society. Now, you might agree with this or not, but within the last probably 15 years, the gamification is going to an all-time high. That is that, we've got smartphones we can play games on, and we're almost trained in a sense with these games that people play to want to do better. We want to rank up. You know what I mean? So when we rank up, we were allowed to do more things, and we become better, as we rank up, and we have to do certain things in order to rank up, and you have to achieve these goals. So we're being trained. We've been trained for this for so long now, at least 15 years. We've been trained for this, and now there's even games that cities in certain countries are actually releasing, saying, partake in this particular system and you'll earn points as well. And with those points, you can buy things. And it's done in a game, but it's a test phase because they want that to go live. And that's the way their society is going to run. China is doing it. So China is the test case for the world to see how this is going to work, because they can get away with it. They control their citizens so hard with such an iron fist. They can punish them at will, and there is no recourse. You cannot appeal that decision. You just have to change your behavior.